Mute. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chiropractic Economics webinar series. I'm Gloria Hall, Editor-in-Chief of Chiropractic Economics, and I will serve as your moderator today. Today's webinar, Turning Breath Analysis into a Business Enabler for Chiropractic Clinics, is sponsored by PNOΗ and presented by Dr. Bradley Brunner and Panos Papadiamantis. Before I tell you more about our presenters, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Our program is being recorded and the webinar will be archived on the Chiropractic Economics website, chiroeco.com/webinar. In the next 24 hours, you will receive an email to the recording. Please note there will be time for questions and answers, and you can submit questions throughout the presentation by clicking on the QA icon at the bottom of your screen. Do not put questions in chat, please. Use the QA feature. And now a little bit about our presenters. Dr. Bradley Brunner is a pioneering chiropractor known for integrating advanced breath analysis and holistic programming into his practice. His innovative approach has significantly enhanced client retention, revenue, and satisfaction. Panos Papadiamantis is an engineer and inventor who is dedicated to helping people live longer and better through breath analysis. He co-founded PNOΗ, one of the most rapidly evolving precision health technology companies trusted by thousands of health professionals, athletes, research centers, and longevity pioneers. And now, Panos, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Gloria, Tyler, and of course, Dr. Bradley. It is great to be here. And it's, I believe, a great opportunity to discuss, first of all, what breath analysis is, and secondly, how breath analysis can help a chiropractic clinic. We started PNOΗ back in 2016, along with my co-founder, Apostolos, with a vision of making breath analysis something that every health professional can leverage in their practice. And today we have clients ranging the entire gamut of practices, from fitness centers to longevity centers, integrative medicine centers, as well as chiropractic clinics, use breath analysis in order to understand their client's physiology better, and then use the information they get from the PNOΗ device and turn it into a holistic program, and also understand how different modalities that they are applying in their treatment plans, how these modalities are actually impacting client physiology. Dr. Bradley has been a PNOΗ customer for quite some time now, and he has mastered the application of PNOΗ into his practice. He's also a Superhuman Protocol user, and I will let Dr. Bradley speak a little bit more about what the Superhuman Protocol entails. Some of you may be familiar with it, but we're going to go some basic information about it. And so I will hand it over to Dr. Bradley, maybe have him say a few things about his practice and his approach, and then we will do a little bit of introduction around breath analysis, and then we're going to go into the actual meat of the discussion, which is how breath analysis is being used in Dr. Bradley's practice. So over to you, Dr. Bradley.
Absolutely. Thank you, Panos. So I'm a board-certified chiropractic sports physician in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. And my practice is really around quantifying wellness. And so PNOΗ really helps me do that. And so depending on the bucket is longevity, performance, or health for a client, I'm helping to seek and get biomarkers along those lines. So people are used to getting blood work, and we need things to be in optimal range. Same thing that I want to see for strength and conditioning. And so from the conditioning piece, PNOΗ does great with that. I use another piece of equipment called the Proteus, and that helps me with the strength, power, speed aspect. And so we put all it together to create an awesome continuum of care to really serve the client where they're at and help them along their health and longevity journey.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Bradley. So many of you may be somewhat familiar with breath analysis. Some of you may not be familiar at all. And that's why, we decided to spend a little bit of time as part of this discussion, going over the basics of what breath analysis. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and we're gonna go over a few things about PNOΗ first of all. So awesome. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. So first of all, a little bit of history on breath analysis. It has been around for about 100 years. It's actually not a novel concept. It's really the idea of measuring oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production. And it's also known as VO2 max testing or metabolic testing. It started back in the early 1900s because it was the first application, the first method that science turned to in order to quantify the energy expenditure of the human body. In other words, how many calories our body's burning. And over the years, it evolved into, as I said, what's called VO2 max testing, metabolic testing, or in the world of cardiology and pulmonology, also known as cardiopulmonary exercise testing, which is dreaded by many as a very complicated and intense type of procedure. And really it is. Like, there's actually scientific articles that describe how difficult it is to conduct this assessment and then analyze the information coming out of it. Now, despite the rigor of this assessment, it is considered one of the most holistic assessments of human biology because it is the only assessment that can reliably assess the efficiency of what we refer to as the oxygen chain. In other words, the three systems in our biology that keep us alive at any given point in time, which is our lungs, our heart, and our cells. If you think about it, we are species that rely on aerobic metabolism in order to sustain life. If we cut out oxygen, we die in a matter of minutes. And in order to provide the necessary oxygen into our cells, we develop things that absorb it, the lungs, and then a pump, which is effectively our heart and blood circulation to pump it. And then the recipient of that oxygen is our cells, which use it to burn nutrients, produce CO2 in the process, and then reversely in this cycle, we discharge CO2 through our breathing. Now, our oxygen chain is also something that heavily affects our nervous system. There is a lot of connection between how we breathe and our nervous system function, by consequence, our brain, and then also by means of regulating abdominal pressure, our respiration can also heavily affect posture. And so by conducting a breath analysis test, you can get a reliable indication of the fitness of all of these different systems. And as a result, many highly esteemed medical organizations regard breath analysis as an incredibly valuable diagnostic procedure, including the American Heart Association, the American Thoracic Society, as well as the American Dietetics Association, for different reasons. This, assessment can tell a lot about our heart. It can tell a lot about our metabolism. It can tell a lot about our lungs, and that's why it was something that emerged in all different fields of medicine. However, across the board, what we saw, and that's why we started the company, was that this assessment was heavily underutilized. And the reason why that was is because devices were very expensive to purchase and operate. And then the rigor of converting the information from these devices into something meaningful was quite expensive. You needed to have specialized training or hire specialized personnel. And then besides the basic insights, which is, where do we see a problem based on all the breath analysis data that we acquired? Step two, what do we actually make of this data when it comes to providing a personalized nutrition and training programming, which effectively required the presence of a specialized person that knows how to analyze the information coming from the test, and B, a specialized person, i.e. a nutrition or trainer, who can take the information and convert it into a personalized nutritional training program. And so the cost of developing a complete system of care that includes all the necessary components to make breath analysis truly useful was cost prohibitive. And so we started out by building the PNOE device, which is an independently validated a cardiometabolic analyzer, meaning that it conducts the same type of analysis in terms of biomarkers and accuracy as the devices that you see in clinical setting. But then we also built the different tools, software tools that a clinic like the one that Dr. Bradley is operating needs in order to make use of the data, put them into a comprehensive report that will soon be able to merge information from other biomarkers, for instance, blood, urine, etc. And then also the infrastructure that includes a nutritionist and a trainer who can put together a comprehensive wellness program for the person. And all of that at a cost that is a fraction of what it used to be. Because we made breath analysis so accessible, right now, PNOE is being utilized by leaders in the space of wellness, hospitality, high-end fitness. For instance, Equinox, Holmes Place in Europe, which is the equivalent Equinox in Europe, Four Seasons, and many other players in the longevity industry are utilizing PNOE. A little bit of information around the science. So what you see here is the actual raw data being recorded from the device as a person is breathing in and out. So these are the waveforms that are being generated from the 3 sensors that you need to have in place in order to conduct a cardiometabolic test. The first waveform is the flow volume. This is the the sequence of inhalation and exhalation that you see here. And then beneath it, you have the O2 concentration, continuous O2 concentration, and continuous CO2 concentration. You can see as a person exhales, O2 concentration goes down as air from deeper within the lungs reaches the sensor, and then CO2 goes up because we have CO2 that we have produced as our human body goes into aerobic metabolism. Now, by collectively analyzing these 3 signals, we put together 23 biomarkers. Some of them are quite famous, like VO2 Max, but VO2 Max is not the only biomarker that this test produces. There are several other incredibly important biomarkers that you can get from a cardiometabolic test. For instance, O2 pulse, that shows us how much oxygen your heart is pumping into your body per heartbeat. And this is something that is being widely used by cardiologists in order to detect the presence of ischemic heart disease. Also, there is the ability to understand how many fats and carbohydrates a person is burning. And by doing so at rest, but also during exercise, you can understand predisposition for metabolic disorders. And the beauty of it is that you can do so in a non-invasive way. And by collectively analyzing all of these 23 biomarkers, you're painting the fitness of all of these important biological systems of the human body. I think what Dr. Bradley kind of alluded to earlier, the beauty of breath analysis really is that it strikes the right balance between diagnostic specificity, diagnostic spectrum, and also ease of use. In very simple words, it gives you a lot of information out of a simple, non-invasive test that is inexpensive to conduct. And this is in contrast to other things like medical imaging or blood work, where you need to acquire a specimen, send it to the lab, and then in many cases wait for a few days or even weeks, as in the case of advanced DNA analysis, to get an understanding of human biology. Versus breath analysis, it's boom, instant. You measure what is happening right then and there. So a little bit of basic understanding around the logistics of the test. There's 2 types of tests. There's a resting metabolic test and the active metabolic test. During these 2 tests, you measure the same variables. The difference is that you're measuring, in one case, in a resting condition versus an exercise condition. If you do both, you get a much more complete picture of human biology. Some of the main insights that you generate from the test, first of all, is biological age. Dr. Bradley is going to talk about that and how he uses it to lure people in his services and practice. We use VO2 Max to quantify biological age because, according to the American Heart Association, it is one of the most powerful predictors of mortality and morbidity. You can understand exactly how many calories a person's body is burning, and therefore you can understand where they need to be in terms of their calorie intake in order to achieve a balance, a deficit, or a surplus. You understand how many fats and carbohydrates a person is burning, and by doing so, you can very precisely determine how many fats, carbs, and proteins they need to be consuming. You also understand where they may be facing biological limitations, and because every different type of workout affects our biology differently, you can provide a personalized training program that has the right dosage of each workout type. And then last but not least, breath analysis is considered the gold standard for determining a person's training zones, which are basically different spectrums of intensity where a person's body is utilizing a different mixture of fats and carbohydrates. And if you want to have the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to your cardio, your endurance training, or your interval training, sticking to the right training zone is going to give you that. So for instance, if you want to become a better fat burner, you need to be in your zone 2, which can vary a lot from one person to the other. So knowing your zone 2 is going to get you to a place where you can get a lot more from your endurance training. Last but not least, one of the main things that we do in PNOE is we take all of the different services you provide in your practice, and that can be biooptimization services like red light therapy or IV compounds that you may be offering. And we match them with the different biological limitations that are identifiable with PNOE. And by conducting a PNOE test, we can then recommend the appropriate services based on the person's biological limitations. This is, in essence, for many of our customers, the biggest and most powerful lead generator for these services, because the average person comes in and now understands that the treatment plan, the biooptimization plan that has been prescribed for him is based on actual biological information rather than being a one-size-fits-all program. That was pretty much an overview of what PNOE does and how PNOE can help a business. Now, Dr. Bradley, opening it up to you to give us a little bit of color around how you think as a chiropractor, what makes you different, and then how PNOE fits into that way of running a business.
Absolutely. PNOE makes things very turnkey, which is wonderful. So I love having a test retest model. And I want to take a systems approach, exactly what you alluded to. This is telling me a lot about cellular function, lung, blood, all this kind of stuff that now we can get some biomarkers ahead of time and then progress them through a treatment plan and show the progress that we're making, and also get some biomarkers on the solutions that maybe you already have that you're going to get success with, but hey, help them to be able to objectify and see so everything's not so subjective and on a feeling basis. So I like to take that approach and get a lot of information, data up front, and then go through some of these insights and recommendations for the client that we can make a lot of improvement early, get that initial buy-in, and then we can start to go into higher packages or bigger programs and start to go from maybe their initial pain case scenario in the beginning and get them shifted over to performance. That's what I really love. And that's kind of the systems that I put into place. And PNOE's been easy, like I said, turnkey, great, expert staff that has really helped me along the way, especially into the nutrition realm too, as well, that we haven't touched on a lot of, but having that app has been great for my clients to be able to hold them accountable. And I don't have to do as much of the hand holding, which is fantastic. And so it's just another piece of the puzzle to kind of really help open up this wellness scope and work in all the different dimensions that is the human experience. So it's been a game changer for me.
Dr. Bradley, you're a Superhuman Protocol user, so do you mind sharing a little bit of information about the Superhuman Protocol and how PNOE has helped you funnel people into the sequence of services that the Superhuman Protocol entails?
Absolutely. So the Superhuman Protocol is a three-step process. So you'd start with PEMF, or pulse electromagnetic fields. And so we're just helping to do earthing and grounding on steroids for people, kind of free up the red blood cells so we get more surface area so we can get nutrients in and out of the cells a little bit easier. Then I'd have them go over to EWOT, exercise with oxygen. So they're on an assault bike or an air bike, and we do different intervals, or maybe we test off of their zone 2, depending on what their ability level is or their limitation from the testing. We'd have them do that to get as much oxygen into the system. And then lastly, they'd go to a big red light bed in near infrared red light. And it helps to really create just this awesome influx of protons into the body so that we can be as increased circulation and anti-inflammatory as possible and help with free radicals and those kind of things. So it's very, very powerful. And we can see the results of that with the PNOE testing. So we start to see a lot of their markers get back into normal ranges that they maybe didn't start that way. And it's just a good sequence that we can either, show objectivity of why they need to do this X amount of times in the treatment plan and how it pairs really nicely with PNOE testing.
Mm-hmm. And, just for a little bit of longitudinal insights on our end, because we work with many Superhuman Protocol users, there's obviously this initial excitement to buy into the Superhuman Protocol setup because it truly is a very comprehensive set of biooptimization services that a lot of people are looking for. But then what we've seen a lot across the board is that consumers enter the process. There is initial excitement. There is kind of a feel-good sentiment. I think this may be working, but because things take a long time to actually translate into visible change in one's body, having the ability to non-invasively and instantly quantifying the impact that these services have on client biology have been instrumental for improving retention for the Superhuman Protocol users when it comes to how many times consumers are utilizing their service. And I think this is what Dr. Bradley is kind of alluding to.
No, absolutely. And we pair this a lot with like in-body body composition scans. And to your point, those take a little bit longer to see that progress of increasing muscle mass or decreasing, body fat percentage. Whereas with PNOE, I can start to see their fat carb ratio changing a lot quicker. I start to see a VO2 Max going up. This gets them excited, and just it's easy buy-in, easy to give that high five and say, keep doing what we have implemented because it's working.
Because guys, down to a cellular level, you can very quickly induce changes that will rev up the mitochondria, rev up cellular function that is going to have a positive impact into how many fats and carbohydrates the body's burning, and that is going to immediately show up into someone's health. Obviously, that doesn't even compare to the time needed to start seeing definition in your abdomen, right? Because it just takes a lot more time to burn the excess fat versus being able to identify whether your mitochondria, after a treatment plan that in many cases is complemented with nutrition and training programming, we can start to see changes a lot faster. Dr. Bradley, do you mind sharing a little bit of information about how you use biological age and VO2 max testing to get people through the door? Because this is also something that many of our customers have been able to do with PNOE.
Yeah, I'm a part of a gym called the Longevity Club. And so when you got a name like that and the different clientele that are coming to it, that's what they expect. So I'm here to help, increase longevity, but more the quality of that. And so more the health span. And so biological age test becomes a proxy that is just wonderful on the outset. And same thing with the VO2 max. So with VO2 Max probably being the best, longevity biomarker out there, and the way we can influx that higher and improve it, the better their all-cause mortality. The risk of that goes down tremendously. So from a fitness standpoint, it's a game changer. And so we use that marketing. And the nice thing about the club, it becomes a buzzword that they're like, hey, what was your biological age? And so it becomes a competition, and they're trying to get, a better and better biological age based off of heavily with their VO2 max. And that's something that I can change for them to shed some awareness of, hey, how are we doing with your breath work? Where's your zone 2 cardio at? And then also, where's the interval work at? And so depending on what they're putting their emphasis on, we can really see that limitation show through with the PNOE testing.
When it comes to complementing the Superhuman Protocol with nutrition and training programming, have you seen better retention when it comes to the Superhuman Protocol sequence when you add nutrition and training in the mix?
Absolutely, because it enhances the results. It helps things go that much quicker. And again, we can just keep having these checkpoints, and we can hold people more accountable by having these different markers that keep, going back and looking at and showing the trend line that's moving in the right direction for them.
How frequently do you retest, and do you do both the active and the resting test on your customers?
That's a really good question. So it all depends, but more often than not, I like to do them together, especially depending on how big the deficiency or the limitation was to begin with. So if they were very low with, let's say, a VO2 max or a fat carb ratio or fat efficiency burning scenario, then I would probably want to do it a little bit quicker, maybe 2 months, 3 months, something like that. But if they're more coming in with a higher score or elite, then we can push it out to more 6 months to 9 to 12, something like that. But in the beginning, I like to make them shorter intervals and then spread them out as we start to see results and they get to more stable performance indicator.
Totally. And in terms of the clientele that you're seeing the biggest uptake when it comes to the PNOE test and the sort of like, the biggest, level of interest.
Yeah.
What would you say that this age group is, and what would you say their main objective is?
I would say probably the age group 35 to 50, and they're usually professionals that they're high octane in their professional life, and they want to keep that going. And the same thing for the personal. So they've maybe pushed off their health a little bit to reach whatever success that they deem necessary in the professional life. And so now we're kind of playing a little bit of catch up. And so they come in, we do some different metrics from PNOE, Proteus, functional movement screens, all these kind of things. And we just see what's the biggest limiter. How do we move that up and get them moving in the right direction so they can keep having all the energy that they need from family life and work life. And so it just starts to give us a really good baseline that we can use to optimize off of. So we're not just trial and error, guessing. Let's test.
Yeah, test and guess, right? I really want to highlight that and again share a little bit of longitudinal insights on our end. Most people that take the PNOE test are either looking to avoid disease or overcome disease. So most people that turn to the report that we have together, the service that we've put together, are interested in longevity. And in certain cases where they're already suffering from some sort of chronic illness, cardiovascular, metabolic, pulmonary, they're trying to figure out what can they do better in terms of nutrition and training to overcome it. And the reason why I'm highlighting that is because traditionally VO2 max testing was considered something that is done by athletes, but the reality is that the vast majority of people that take the PNOE test, and Dr. Bradley's clinic is certainly proof to that, are doing so not for athletic optimization purposes, but for longevity or disease curing purposes.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely that medicine 3.0. How can we be proactive and preventative? And that's who's walking in the door. And if maybe that wasn't top of their mind, maybe they were coming in because of a source of dysfunction with, again, like I said, that continuum of care from pain to performance, I'm getting them shifted over into using this kind of, device implementation, because that's what's going to help keep them healing and make this restoration happen sustainably, in theory, forever.
Definitely. Now, Dr. Bradley, let's take a step back and focus on the concept of growing a chiropractic clinic, PNOE aside, because in my mind, PNOE is the end result of a thought process of how can I make my chiropractic clinic better. You mentioned early on that you're a holistic chiropractor. You're interested in, growing your clinic through, the addition of different services. Walk us through your approach to managing your clinic, and then what are some additional things and next steps for your business?
Absolutely. So I take a systems approach. I want to be as holistic as I can. So I want to see, what does that snapshot look like for people? So I'll start with PNOE. So the resting test, let's get nutrition in order. Let's figure out, are we in the ballpark of what's the caloric load that you need to have? Where are the macro nutrients? And then where are the micro? Then kind of shifting over to the active test. Let's see, what kind of capacity for recovery do you have, of figuring out what that VO2 max is? Are we getting blood and oxygen pumped to everywhere that needs to go, and the things that we're working on from a chiropractic nervous system standpoint? And then kind of lastly is part of my kind of 3 S's of strength, stamina, and stability, is then over in the strength side. So I use a Proteus motion device, and I start to see, do we have strength and stability in the spine and all the other joints of the body? And I get to verse everybody across the world, just like PNOE is able to do with normative values for the VO2 max. I'm doing that with strength, power, and speed, which, like we said, if you don't identify as an athlete, that's fine. You got a body, you're an athlete. So I look at that approach the same way, and I'm going to check you top to bottom and see, okay, what kind of wattage can we produce? Can we do that in a safe, technique, systems manner of seeing what kind of archetypes can the body get into? And we start to be able to reproduce that over time, which is, again, going to bring in more and more revenue, but it's also what should be the best standard of care for the patient, the client, because now we're doing our due diligence and our duty of what they came to us, and we're not too narrowly focused, and we can take that 10,000-foot view and be an expert generalist like we should be as a portal of entry provider.
Amen to that. So, Dr. Bradley, any other thoughts that you would like to share about, your business, your approach, your utilization of PNOE, before we open it up to other questions?
No, I think that's the main scenario. Like I said, it's very turnkey, so it wasn't having to, revolutionize what I already had in my mind of what I wanted to do. You guys just had the perfect, portable equipment to implement it for me. And so, and then having the systems on the back end of their awesome reports and everything that's very user-friendly for my clientele. And then I can elaborate further off of that for them, depending on what goal we're trying to pursue. So, I'll be curious.
Yeah. So to Dr. Bradley's point, certainly as a company, we started by making the test more accessible, by making the hardware cheaper, easier to use, portable, while maintaining the accuracy. But then we build an entire ecosystem of services to make the test useful. Because what we saw when we first started the company, and what is also documented in peer-reviewed literature, is that practitioners don't have the time or the know-how to fully analyze what is coming out of a breath analysis test. That's why breath analysis has been given the name VO2 max testing or metabolic testing, because if you take any other device in the market, what the report is going to spit out is your VO2 max value and your resting metabolic rate, literally 2 numbers. But this is by no means prescriptive. It doesn't tell you where the problem is, and because it doesn't tell you where the problem is, and it doesn't tell you what you can do in order to fix that problem, it becomes a test that many people unfortunately have done, And after doing it, they scratch their head saying, okay, yeah, I know my VO2 max is 45 or 50 or whatever, but how does that change my training? How do I improve it? You know, where is the limiting factor for making my VO2 max higher? And so in order to address that, we obviously had to build a report that is intuitive and useful for the end consumer, and very importantly, can provide talking points and upselling opportunities for the affiliate, Dr. Bradley in this case. This is where also the services recommendation engine comes into play. An extremely important part of our reporting is that it integrates with your services and can include what is appropriate in terms of the services you include in your practice based on the client's biological limitations. And then also, you know, biooptimization services are important, yes, but you know, we should always keep an eye on the fact that nutrition and training should always be a part of a person's lifestyle program. But unfortunately, these also take time. And that's why right now as a company, we fully support these two functions when it comes to providing a full-blown prescription for nutrition and training. That was, kind of a closing remark on my end. I would like to open it up to questions now. I don't know if you guys have any, but we can start by, answering any of them. You guys can type them up on the Q&A section. And yeah.
Yeah, questions at this time. If anyone has questions, put it in the Q&A. I have no open questions right now. That was really informative, both Dr. Bradley and Panos, especially from an athlete. I'm a runner who's always trying to run further and faster. And so very, very interesting from a personal perspective. So hopefully our participants got a lot out of that. Oh, I have a question for you. What is the cost of the product, or is it a monthly recurring fee?
Great question. So the PNOΗ device comes with a set of services built in. At the end of the contract, you end up owning the device. So you do actually buy the hardware, but you also get a level of service that is appropriate for your business. You discuss that with our team, and we structure a package that works for your business. What I will do is I'm going to include in the chat a link that you can use in order to schedule some time with someone from our team who can discuss the different pricing options with you. Where can I get a demo or a personal test? So we do have hundreds of affiliates where you can go and get tested. And also we do some live demonstrations in certain cases. We attend tens of different expos. I don't know where you're located, but again, best way to schedule some sort of demo or trial the device is to schedule some time with our team, and then they can coordinate with you. Yeah, that's a good question. It was actually on my mind to ask it, but I didn't. Dr. Bradley, do you mind sharing a little bit of pricing information about how you structure pricing with PNOΗ, and then what you do in terms of baking in the cost of PNOΗ with the Superhuman Protocol services and all of that stuff?
Absolutely. So kind of like on a per session basis, it's $150. And so that kind of translates into the testing. So if they're just doing the resting test, it's $150. If they're just doing the VO2 max or active test, it's $150. Nutrition, same thing. So it all kind of scales up from there. So it'd be $300 then for the two together. And then it'd be $450 if we add on that nutrition component too, so they could have that consultation with the app and everything. And then we would have kind of our report of findings, and then we would then, talk about packages depending on what kind of limitations and what kind of treatment schedule we need to make. It'll kind of branch out from there, but that's kind of how things usually start. So 150, 300, 450 to kind of get the ball rolling for me.
Also, Dr. Bradley, when it comes to baking the PNOE price into a set number of superhuman protocol questions. Sessions. Do you do any sort of bundling?
The only bundle that I initially started with was a $600 bundle, which would get you kind of all the testing with the report of findings scenario. And then off of that, we just kind of went with, hey, this is how many sessions I think that you need to kind of do to go in order to get to our next reevaluation. We just kind of priced it accordingly, but I didn't do any discounting or anything like that. To be honest, very upfront of the quality and the value that they were going to receive, and just didn't seem it necessary to kind of do any discounting or any deals at this time.
That's great. And just FYI, what Dr. Bradley just described is a very, very typical pricing structure for many of our affiliates. Another question when it comes to marketing this service to your clientele, Dr. Bradley, what do you do to spread the word, and what kind of marketing tools do you use?
Absolutely. So for me, because I like to kind of quantify somebody's wellness, so my reach out was going to a lot of different gyms and a lot of different practitioners that maybe have heard of this VO2 Max thing and this Zone 2 thing that's going around, from the Dr. Peter Attia's to the Dr. Andy Galpins and Huberman and all those guys. So it was kind of an easy sell, saying, hey, I have this stuff here. I'm not trying to take any clients or patients from you, but we can really co-manage, and you get some more data leverage from me to really help objectify what you guys are probably already doing good at, but let's make sure that you're not leaving any stone unturned. And so that has been very successful, because they've heard of this kind of stuff and they're hearing more podcasts on it. And I have those offerings, and they're excited to kind of partner up and go from there.
That's awesome. Any nutritional protocol laid out after testing specific eating plan? To be honest with you, I don't necessarily understand this question. I don't. Maybe you can, rephrase it, Dr. Bradley. I don't know if you wanna,
Nutritional plan. Maybe that'd just be off of using, the PNOE app of nutrition questionnaire, and everything can really start to plug and play. But I don't have any specific nutritional or even supplemental protocols at this time.
Yeah, just a little bit of background on the nutrition programming that we provide and the level of service that we offer in terms of nutrition. So we built the entire back end of our app, so we have full control over recipes. We have full control over what is being prescribed in terms of food items, and we hire registered dietitians who actually build the plans. And so after the test, there is a very comprehensive questionnaire where we record eating disorders, preferences, lifestyle, etc. And so the nutritional program that we end up putting together can be anything from keto to vegan. It can be anything from including 7 meals to 2 meals a day. Obviously, we will always stick within what is considered safe according to nutritional guidelines. But obviously, that spectrum is quite broad, and we fully appreciate the need to be in line with what the person's preferences and lifestyle is. And so we can very much personalize the nutrition program, not just to the person's metabolism that has been recorded by the device, but also to the person's lifestyle that is recorded from the questionnaire.
There is a question for Dr. Bradley. How much does he charge for the Superhuman Protocol?
$150 per session.
$150 per session. Okay. And Dr. Bradley, does that include all 3 sessions, or just red light, or
all 3?
All 3. Okay.
Yep. EWOT, PMF, and total biomodulation.
What biomarkers are measured? Yeah, we measured 23 biomarkers on a breath-by-breath basis. It's actually a comprehensive list. I highly recommend that you schedule some time with one of our experts. They can walk you through the science and give you a little bit of information of what I shared. in today's webinar.
I don't see any other open questions, but I want to take this time to thank both of you, Dr. Bradley and Panos. That was really, really informative, and for sharing your expertise. I want to remind participants that this webinar has been recorded and can be found on, it will be available on ChiroEconomics website. And just thank you to PNOΗ and to both of you for participating. And I think people would find this very, very beneficial. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Any closing thoughts?
No, Gloria, thank you so much for helping us organize that. And Dr. Bradley, thank you for joining us.
Yes,
Always
thank you so
a
much.
pleasure to have a great PNOΗ affiliate have a live conversation about PNOΗ and breath analysis.
I love it. Thank you for your support. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.